Templeton. I think you have all the attention you're going to get.
Okay, I'm Melissa Templeton, and I'm a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist in Texas. And also, I've been doing that about 16 years, and I've been teaching at SAM for 10 years in criminal justice, teaching psychology courses. So I've had to learn a little bit anyway, about criminal justice, which we learn anyway, in psychology and abnormal behavior. One of the reasons I kind of got involved and interested in this is because, well, fraternities have a stereotype, that is not always deserved. It's something that, we should all try to fight against, try to find the stereotype that we want. And sometimes people get into fraternities for the wrong reason. And those people cause problems due to nefarious antisocial acts. And that's because antisocial people are attracted to power structure. Okay, like banking, like Wall Street. If you've seen the Wolf of Wall Street, that guy, classic sociopath. He didn't kill anybody, right? But he hurt a lot of people. He caused a lot of damage. So you probably heard about the personality assessment. I think everybody that came here, as far as undergraduates, had to take one of those. And that rules out some things. But bigger than that, what we're going to talk about today is what kind of people do you want in your fraternity? And, it's easy to think, well, we want people that are fun. We want people to hang out with, we want people to party with. But when you look around at these other guys here, these successful guys that have done well in business, these are the guys that you want, that are your age, that are going to be like these guys, because that's going to give you connections. That's what's going to give you good friends, reliable friends, maybe somebody who's a banker, so that you have a banker who knows you and trusts you and is going to lend money to you. So what you want in your fraternity is to be long-sighted, to think about the future, to have some vision, not just for your own self, because, 82% of people looking for a job, particularly the first job, get it through a connection, somebody they know. Only 18% of people do a cold interview and get a job. And I'm not talking about for a minimum wage job. I'm talking about for a real job, for a career job. So that's why you want to be thinking long-term about the people around me, the people I'm getting to know, how are they going to help me? And how are they not going to hurt me? Because, you could pull somebody in fraternity that could hurt you, that could get you sued. Right now, I'm involved in a case a local case in Huntsville where a fraternity is being sued. Or is going to be sued, on the edge of being sued by a sexual harassment case. So, these are things, anybody can screw up, true, but there are pro-social behaviors and there are antisocial behaviors. And unfortunately, we're now mapping this on the genome. These people are born like this, so yeah, maybe they can't help it, but you don't want them on your radar. You don't want them in your fraternity. You don't want them in your group of friends, because it's going to trickle down and it's going to hurt you. So you're not trained to see that, but that's one reason we're wanting to do this personality assessment, to protect you, to protect everybody, because, now with liability the way it is, we are all on everybody's food chain, liability-wise, aren't we? So we have to always be thinking about that. And in 20 years, when you're trying to get your career really going, you don't want on the front page of the paper some ATO member, former member, that has gone and, shot a bunch of people in a convenience store or something. So you have to think about, you have to be more farsighted when you're recruiting people. This is a critical time. And remember, too, that sociopaths, that's not the Kaczynski guy, generally. It's back in the cabin, hunkered down, making bombs and mailing them off. Okay? This guy is friendly. This guy's outgoing. This guy's a schmoozer. This guy's going to make a great salesman. And most sociopaths never kill anybody. They often hurt animals. They don't have a lot of remorse. And maybe they thought they'd get away with it, they would hurt more people. But it's hard at your age to identify that, because these people are fun. These people are sensation seekers. They like to be wild and crazy. So when you're thinking about recruiting somebody, you want to think about, what's going to help you now and what's going to help you in the future, and what's not going to hurt you, and that's important too. So when we're talking about sociopaths, out of 100 men, how many think men do you think have major sociopathic tendencies? 3 to 4. That's good because most people think like 1, it's rare, like schizophrenia. Like 3 to 4. So you know some. You know some. And the problem is, if you're drinking or whatever's going on, it's easy to get sucked into an activity that later you're kind of going, oh my gosh, how did that happen? So the best way is to not be around these people. So what we're going to really talk about today, I just wanted to start off with that to explain why I'm doing these personality assessments, why I've been hired to do these on people that are going to have some freedoms where, you need to be a responsible person, because sociopaths don't think about the future. They don't worry about the future. They think, what can I get right now? So they usually don't have big career plans. If they do, it's going to be all about, taking advantage of people, making money, not having to work too hard to get other people to give them what they need. So what we're going to talk about, what I want to teach you today is communication skills, kind of advanced skills, so that you can kind of maybe get more information than you're used to getting, right? So that it will help you say, oh wait, I'm getting some warning signs here, some things I might not have noticed had I not known these particular communication skills. So let me hand this out, and I should have asked you what questions you have about me. Anybody have any questions about me, my background? A little bit.
What class did you say you
Oh, I teach, that's a good question. I teach social deviance. I haven't taught that one in a while. I teach understanding human behavior. And I teach interviewing victims, witnesses, and suspects. So this is kind of my area.
Yeah, I only ask because I'm a CJ site user, so I might see you.
Yeah, and they're electives now. Some of them, I think that's all I have under this one. Here's some more. Good job. Okay, good question. And I've been teaching understanding human behavior for 10 years. And I'll be teaching again in the fall and spring. And I teach, I've been teaching interviewing about 5 years. So that's kind of a new one for me. So why would they have a therapist teach interviewing? I'm teaching them how to interview suspects, victims, and witnesses. Why wouldn't they have a CJ person? They have adjuncts who are police officers, district attorneys. Why'd they hire me? Because they finally did some science on interviewing instead of sticking people in the police department and saying, well, here we're going to teach you how we've always done it. They started doing some science because surprisingly, like 50% of people will confess. Even with a lousy interview, they will confess. But then they thought, if we're getting 50% of people that will confess even with a lousy interviewer, what if we really did some research on how to get people to tell you the truth, right? How to get people to talk to you. And so they did the research, and you know what they discovered? It wasn't what they thought at all. It had nothing to do with scaring people, had nothing to do with threatening people. None of that stuff worked. Very rarely did it work. What worked was building rapport. That person thinking that you care about them. And so I hate to say this, but in a little bit of a way, I'm going to teach you how to think like a sociopath, because that's what they do to get in your brain, to figure out how they can use you. So, but y'all are sociopaths. See, I don't know what these older guys are on. I'm sure they're not. But so I'm going to teach you how to have a deeper level of communication. A little bit. This is just going to be like the 40 hours of interview class I teach, but here in the 30, 45 minutes, whatever I have, right? I'm going to teach you those skills. So now you're going to be dangerous, right? Okay, so what's the goal of communication?
To know more about somebody.
Yeah, all of those. Get information. What'd you say?
To get information about someone and just get to know about.
Get to know them. Okay, and then you said seek to understand. That's the biggie. Seek to understand. In an interview, that's what I teach my students. You want to seek to understand them. But what does a typical communication look like? Let's do a typical. A typical social communication. Hey, how you doing? Fine. Can you believe this weather? I can't believe we've had so much rain out here.
We needed that.
Yeah, we do. We're lucky. I just hope it holds up for the rest of the summer. So did you learn anything about me? No. And that's what we usually do. Usually it's because we don't want to, especially men. We don't want to. We really don't want to learn anything, okay? But what y'all are doing when you're talking about people that you're going to be connected with legally, socially, emotionally, mentally, you want to really know somebody before you bring them in, not just they're a fun guy with a good-looking girlfriend, but you want to know them better so that when you bring them into the fold, right, into your brotherhood, you want to know you can trust them. You want to know they're not going to be on the front page of the paper. So how do you get to know them better? Because recruitment communication is different than a typical social communication. And this is what I tell my students. And the first thing I tell them is stop watching police shows where they interview people. Stop watching police. And I can always tell who's watching. First in the class, I can tell the people who do the bad interviews, they're still watching police shows. You know, and they're barraging people with questions. What do you get when you barrage people with questions? You doing okay? You feeling all right? Was lunch good? Yeah?
Kind of shut down.
Yeah, people get defensive. They're like, what are they don't trust you. What are they after? They're like, what do they want to hear? What do they want me to say? Right? So that's the problem, is that what we usually do is we think the way to get information is communication. And that's what the police shows do, right? They say like, okay, so where were you at 5 o'clock? Okay, and who was that you were with? Well, what I teach my students is, if you act like you are really interested, you know, which you're going to be in these guys, so you don't have to fake it, right? If you act like you're interested in them, they're going to tell you stuff you never thought to ask. And that stuff's the most important stuff. The stuff you never thought to ask. And everything you needed to ask, you kind of have in your head, maybe you have it written down on a piece of paper, they're going to tell you anyway, without you asking. And then you're going to get more information. So, you know, that's another thing. Is asking a lot of questions doesn't necessarily get you more information. So, social communication is very different from the kind of communication you want to do. And I kind of gone over at the beginning with the personality inventory, why we need a formal recruitment process. Okay, so looking at your handout there, there's sort of a system, and I didn't make this up, but called ironic, where you identify and initiate. This is right out of an interview with the suspect, victim, or witness, right? So, of course, you introduce yourself, and you start the conversation. That's the easy part. I tell them, we're not going to practice that, because that's the easy part. Hi, I'm so-and-so, how are you doing? It's probably people, when you recruit, I don't know that much about it, do you usually already know somebody, you've kind of got your eye on them?
No.
Somebody you're thinking about, or you just to everybody?
If we're given the name, like if they're like an alumni reference, maybe you know a little bit about them, but usually not know anything. Or if you went to high school with them. You know.
Right, you might know something about them then. Okay, so first you're going to do that and start the conversation. So that's going to be easier if you know a little bit about them, because you can say, you know, how's your mom and dad or whatever. But think outside the box too, and think about recruiting people you wouldn't have thought of recruiting, right? Like, you know, who would have thought of recruiting Bill Gates? That'd be a nice connection to have, wouldn't it? Right? So who would have thought? So think about, you know, don't let something about somebody turn you off, unless it's something that sort of makes hairs on your back of your neck stand up, because we do have something in our brain, especially when we get older. I think we get better at this. You know, we get better at judging people. It says, there's something about that person I need to stay away from. So think about, you know, somebody who's maybe an introvert. That doesn't mean, you know, that they have a problem. Introverts are good, and actually there's a few more, and I don't know who's who, you know, but there's, y'all got some introverts, and that's a good thing, because you need balance, you know. Somebody who's too extroverted, you need balance with that, and you probably need people maybe not so much at the extremes. So watch out for the guy that wants to party 4 or 5 nights a week. He's a big extrovert. He gets all his energy from people, and that also, at your age, you know, a high extroversion means you're a little too, you like a lot of risk-taking, you like a lot of sensation-seeking, you like those dopamine receptors to be filled up. And that's usually smoking, drinking, drugs, those kinds of things. The kinds of things that get people in trouble and keep them from being successful. Okay, the second step there, build rapport. Okay, we all know how to do this too. It's a little sociopathic, right? A little flattery, a little like, you hey, you seem really smart, or, I saw you in intramurals, you were really great. How else could you do that in a way that didn't make you feel dirty, right? Build rapport with somebody.
Similar interests.
Yeah, similar interests, that's great. Things you have in common, maybe from the same town, you have the same major, something like that.
I love that bracelet you have.
There you go. So yeah, cool shoes, man. Where'd you get them? Something like that. Okay. And so then they're going to start getting the idea. They're going to start getting a little more relaxed, right? And then the opening statement, where you might talk about, hey, did you know I'm in a fraternity? Oh man, I didn't see you as a fraternity guy. Oh yeah. And because there may be a lot of people, and there's probably a lot of people that would be great in your fraternity that don't like fraternities. But they might be worth it for you to convince them that it's not like they think, that they have a stereotype, which might be right about other fraternities, right? But that they would fit in with your fraternity. Or maybe their parents don't like it, or their girlfriend doesn't like it, or something like that. So you might have some things you need to overcome there. Okay? Now here's what we usually do. Let's say, I just went shopping with the ladies, so I'm going to use like a girl experience. Also because, when you use experiences that aren't common with another person, it keeps them from getting defensive. It's kind of the way Jesus used parables. He said, oh, there was a man one time. So the guy forgets all about we're talking about me, right? Like that. So, on the narrative, on the story. So what we usually do in a social conversation is, right, we listen to somebody's story. But the problem is, what do we do next? Okay, so I'm shopping, and I've got my basket, right, and one of the older ladies, maybe Ronnie comes up and she's got her basket, and she goes, oh, look, I got this, this, and this. What do I say? Yeah, and then what do I say?
Did you get it?
That'd be good, but usually when I go, well, look what I got. We always talk about us, right? That's okay in a social conversation. But when you're recruiting, right, he can ask questions about you, that's cool, but what you really want to do is be interested in him, because the more interested you act, the more information he's going to give you. So when he says, oh yeah, in high school, I was on the football team and da-da-da-da-da, and then, what do we usually say? Oh, I was on the basketball team. We start talking about us. Then we just completely miss out on, so then, I have people where they do that and I'm just like, never mind, I'm going on there. So it's just, no matter what, it's kind of like, or they can one-up your story, right? Well, I was a quarterback, what were you? Right, they can one-up your story. So when somebody starts their narrative, right, like they say, you say, so where'd you go to high school? And they said, so-and-so. And you said, oh, wow, how was that? And they said, oh, well, it was great, I did so-and-so. And you said, well, in that, weren't y'all like 4A that year or something like that? And the guy goes, yeah, and you stay with their story. And then they'll start opening up, and I have my students do this. I have them, the first day in class, they're sitting there going like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was at all. I thought we were going to like nail people and interrogate and get tough, shake them up, make them talk. And they're like, so I tell them like, your head's going to spin around because this is not what you thought at all. So when you get people talking and they get comfortable and they get to trusting you, they will tell you things because you're looking for information, good and bad, right? Or are they going to fit in with our group? But also, this is kind of my bent because I'm always, when people come in my office, they don't want me to tell them everything that's right with them. They're worried about what's wrong with them. So I'm diagnosing, like in my head, and I'm trying to not ask questions, but act interested so that they relax and give me more and more information. Right? Now, I don't want them to feel like they've stripped naked, the first hour. So, I don't like probe, particularly at first. But how much time do you have to recruit people?
All year, but we have an actual 1 week for like the rush week thing.
That's a very good point. You stole that, but that's exactly right that you have all year. So, from now on, you don't want to start like the week before. You want to start thinking all year, maybe making a list of who would be good. What guy can I start having him come around a little so we can see that we're like him, or we're like this, or he would fit in, or he would be an asset to us, and the other people would see that too. Okay, so you can ask people, because you're recruiting a lot of freshmen, right? Mm-hmm. So, There's a couple of downsides here, and that is that when you're recruiting freshmen, you don't know about a lot about like how they're doing in school, right? Like how they're handling school, or what are their relationships, say, with women, you know, do they have a problem? Like, because one thing you want to watch out for, and this is the sort of situation I'm in, you know, is the date rape thing. So that would not necessarily could be involve alcohol, but it could also be about a sociopath. So you don't want that to happen in your fraternity, because you know that could blow up and be really bad for your whole fraternity and be in the paper and dissuade people from, you know, coming into your fraternity. And that's something that happens a lot. So it's hard to get to know people, you know, because they've just left home, right? So some people sell a lot of wild oats and then they sort of settle down. How many of y'all recruited as freshmen to the fraternity? Okay, and how many recruited after that? Sophomore, junior year. Okay, so it's pretty typical. But maybe you could think outside the box there too. Not only think of different people, but think of, you know, upperclassmen, because you're going to be able to know more about them. They're going to have a GPA, right? They're going to have a reputation on campus. Okay, so the narrative should be about 80% of your conversation. The questions are just to wrap up things that you either don't have time to wait to hear from them because they will tell you, or because they haven't told you even though you've been around them a lot, and there's just a few things you want to ask about. Okay, so let's drop down to some of that. Somebody already said, look for similarities, right? Will they be a good fit? So what do you need in your fraternity? Do you need more people with stronger grade point, more studious people? Do you need people who are more athletic? Do you need people who are more creative and imaginative? All of these things are the things that show up on the personality. So what do you think your fraternity needs more of? Or maybe something all fraternities always need more of. Definitely what? More studious people? And athletic people? And what about like social people or community-minded people? People who are self-driven? Have initiative? So what do you think are the strengths of your fraternity as it is now? Loyalty? Diversity? A lot of diversity, that's good. Yeah, you're not as diverse as you think. but that's good, yeah. Personality-wise. You know, that's what that's always what I see. But yeah, there's racial, there's socioeconomic, and there's lots of different kinds of diversity. So, what else?
Well, this is something I was thinking about, because you told us like how to talk to them, I guess, like the ironic thing. When you meet them for maybe for the very first time, a lot of times we'll have like 5 to 10 minutes per person because it's orientation, trying to talk to as many
It's
people as
quick.
we can. Like how would we use this?
Great question. Okay, and we're going to role play that too. You know, it's one thing we're going to do in a few minutes here. But what I would do is, you know, it's verbal and nonverbal, right? And supposedly, you know, science says that nonverbal communication is 80% of your communication. So if you're talking to them, you know, and a good-looking girl walks by and you're doing that, and they think he's not very interested in you. So eye contact is big. Eye contact and leaning in a little with your posture. You know, maybe even like, yeah, good to talk to you. Touching is big. So those are your nonverbals. You know, not crossing your arms and legs like this, keeping an open stance. Those are all things that says, I'm open, I'm honest, and I'm interested in you. And you know, because of survival, that's our bottom line. We are all very excited about people who are interested in us. Right? That's our bottom line, because that means if I find somebody who's interested in me and he's, you know, a solid person, he's going to help me survive. We don't realize but we're thinking about that all day long. Right? Okay, so that's an excellent question. So we're going to practice that in a minute. I would say most of all, be interested in them. Don't talk about you. If they have questions about ATO, they can ask you. But So really think about it. The bottom line for people joining a fraternity, this may sound crazy, is it's about survival. Because groups of people help us survive. It's called tend and befriend. We make friends, we have people that can support us. You know, when you get in the business world, you're thinking, okay, I need a banker, I need an insurance guy. You know, it's always the same. And so we're thinking people that got our back, people that are good at getting food, you know, and people that are good at doing these things that I need. And then we'll give them this back. That's the reciprocity that sociopaths don't have, right? Okay, so what you want is quality. You don't want to just say, let's see how many people we can get to rush because that makes us look good or that makes us feel good. Now it's true, you know, it's like a 5A football team. The more people, the bigger the school, the better players you have. So, but you need to weed it out and not take people just to get numbers in. You need to think about, are they going to help us or are they going to hurt us? 20 years from now, will we be glad this guy's in our fraternity? Will we be going to his ranch, you know, for the weekend with our wife, you know? That's the kind of thing that's good to think about in the future. Okay, so also, when you act interested in them, you might ask a question like, what holds you back from joining a fraternity? You know, if you're getting the feeling they're like, I don't know if fraternity is me. And maybe it's the money, you know, so maybe, you know, if you find a lot of good people that would be great, and you know they have great potential, but the money thing is holding back, they already have a job and they're having to pay for school, you know, maybe the alumnus could develop some scholarships for the fraternity, you know, if they could prove need or whatever. So don't let things like that hold you back, because there's always a solution to a problem, especially about money. Does the person worry about hazing? You know, they're not going to say, well, I'm worried about hazing. They're not going to tell you that in 5 minutes. But if you act really interested, you know, like, well, how'd you do in high school? We're looking for some good recruits. We need some people. We need some smart guys. You know, are you a smart guy? And they're laughing. And here's the other thing is, people will tell you. You know, when I had convenience stores, which is what I did for 17 years, I had 4 or 5 businesses. An oil field hot shop business, convenience stores, a catering business, and a jewelry business, and it seems like there was something else. But I had two or three convenience stores, kind of depending on what's going on. But I discovered that if I asked people a question, they would tell me. Like if I would say, like, if you were to smoke marijuana, about how many times would you smoke it? They go, oh, about 2, 3. If I said, do you smoke marijuana? They go, no. So it's how you ask the question. But overall, it's better to get people to trust you and ask as few questions as possible, and they'll give you a lot of information. So, probe for trouble areas, because I think, you know, one thing fraternities make the mistake of is not ruling out people that could be a problem later on. You know, they're thinking about getting the dues in, they're thinking about getting numbers in, you know, it's like a competition, they're thinking about, you know, this guy's athletic or this or that, but, you know, just as important as the grades and athleticism are, do they have problems? You know, do they have problems that are going to affect you? Like, you know, if they start stealing their stuff, right, and hawking it, I mean, that's a problem. And nobody can figure out who it is. So after building a rapport, look for signs of pro-social behavior. So look for the good things, because that will tell you a lot that they don't have the bad things. For example, if they're compassionate about animals, you know, if they see an animal and they try to run over it, that's probably not a good thing. You know, that's probably a bad thing. But if they're taking a spider outside, it's probably pretty likely they're not antisocial. Okay, not that people who kill spiders are antisocial. Are they compassionate? Are they involved in, you know, do they work at the animal shelter? How are they in the volunteer activities? Do they not ever show up? Do they show up in the volunteer activities? That tells you something about them too. So you're going to avoid people who are impulsive, who manipulate. And one thing you can see with this is the guy who are players. You know, that's manipulation and sensation seeking. Like they always have something going on that's kind of scary, that makes them really excited. That's also related to addictions, by the way. It's that sort of mixture of fear and excitement to keep a lot of addicts stuck in that cycle, because that produces dopamine in the receptors, and this gets to like the neuronal level. But definitely that's something you want to avoid. That is something people sometimes grow out of. So that's another reason at your age, it's really hard to tell, does somebody have like a serious personality disorder, or are they just so in their wild oats and they need to calm down a little bit? Sexist and racist attitudes. Lying is something antisocial people do, but it's very difficult, even for a person who's an expert like me, to tell if somebody's lying. And I do a lot of this in my classes. So you can get an idea though, if somebody's telling you stuff and you're like, wait a minute, like, I'm not believing this. Because a real sociopath will lie just to see if he can get away with it. They love to play cat and mouse. They love to bait you. So if you get that feeling somebody's doing that, get out of there, get off their radar. So, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, what kind of things should you look for? Because I mean, I want to say that they're not going to be like overt about their lies, I suppose. Like they would be try to.
Oh, they hide it?
Yeah.
Actually, sociopaths don't. They won't try to hide it. So if you really act interested in them, a sociopath of all people, they will start bragging. If you go like, wow, they will start bragging about it. They will, oh yeah, they're proud of it.
You notice they're bragging about a lot of stuff.
I would worry that, some people are just proud of what they do. So, it's hard to make generalizations about this stuff. Don't try to be a junior psychologist because that's going to be hard. But, if you hear them talking about setting fires, torturing animals, using women, those kinds of things, I think that should set off alarms in your head anyway, right? So, but maybe just because we've had some problems, maybe just be extra aware, like, okay, this guy seems really cool, but maybe not, And then we'll do some other things, definitely to try to rule out with that, because generally these people have been doing crimes for years since they were young. But what happens is if things get adjudicated and then it gets wiped off their record when they're 18. So that is a problem a bit. Although, not to say a lot of males go to jail, that doesn't mean you're a sociopath. The majority of people in prison are not sociopaths. Sociopaths are really good at not getting caught, the smart ones. But they're on the normal curve. There's really young ones and there's really smart ones, just like the average population. But I will say that they are antisocial personality disorder individuals are going to be attracted to power organizations like fraternities because they seek power. They are very attracted to CJ. Every year I can spot at least one sociopath in my classes. Now, a lot of sociopaths will go to college because they think I don't need to spend 4 years figuring out how to get what I want. I can get it in other ways, and a lot of them do. But, so that kind of limits it. But they are attracted to power, so you have to think about that.